Welcome to another Steeler Thoughts Chief Feelings film review. This video will be reviewing the Steelers' Week 4 27-24 loss in Indianapolis. Unfortunately, it's the first loss for either the Chiefs or Steelers this year, but there's a lot to look at, both good and bad, and we'll get into this game in just a minute. First, I wanted to thank everyone who's been following along, either these film reviews here on YouTube or the Steeler Thoughts Chief Feelings podcast, either on YouTube or on whatever app you download audio podcasts on. Thanks also to those of you who follow along on social media. We are at STCF715 on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. That's at STCF715. We particularly tried to post a lot on Twitter the night of Chiefs and Steelers games, in the couple hours after the games to kind of break down what we've been seeing. But speaking of breakdowns, let's get to the breakdown of this game. We've got several plays to look at from this past Sunday's Steelers performance. In our first play, we start as the first offensive play of the game. It's 0-0, first play of the first quarter. The Colts started this game with the ball, and they started with a play that kind of, set the tenor for how a lot of this game would go while the Colts were on offense. They start out here, they've got one running back in the backfield and one tight end. That's 11 personnel. And they end up motioning Josh Downs, their third wide receiver, across into this orbit motion coming around. And as you can see, I think that's Beanie Bishop runs with him. So that's a signal that to the quarterback that this may be man coverage. What they end up doing from this formation, so Downs ends up coming out into the flat, and Jonathan Taylor comes out into the other flat. The tight end here will come run a curl, and they run a post route and then a deep over, trying to kind of make the safety make a decision on which route to cover. The Steelers, even though they showed Beanie Bishop following the orbit motion man, actually come out in a cover 3. So they've got 3 guys responsible for deep thirds of the field. And then they've got the flat out here, and then they have these 2 underneath defenders. So now if you remember, we've got the route concept here. We've got the kind of deep clear out post route, and then we've got the over coming over here. And so they try to put Minka Fitzpatrick in conflict here. And as you can see, he's staying over the top of the over. And so Anthony Richardson, who is back here right now, is looking at this, and he's probably watching the safety right here, seeing him stay over the top of the over, and he's about to throw this right now, staying over the top of the post, and so he takes the over. Now, the issue with that is Joey Porter Jr. is trailing because he knows that he's got Minka over the top. Because normally, when you've got the cover 3, you'll have this guy staying on top of this deep route. But over here, he's got Minka over here over top, so Joey Porter is trailing. If Porter is up on top of, you would expect them kind of capping the third, staying on top, then this route is open for Richardson, this over right here. But since Porter is trailing, look at what Richardson is looking at right when he's about to throw this ball. He's made the decision right at this point. You can see he's about to wind up and throw this ball. This guy's continuing on his post. He's coming across, but Porter is trailing, and so he's in a position to drop off and intercept this ball. This is not a throw that should be made in this scenario. The window is actually not very wide either. You've got Queen underneath, Porter liable to drop off, and Minka over the top. So look what happens when he throws this ball. Porter does drop off. It's just that the ball is so high that Porter is not quite able to get up to it. Pittman has to catch it at full extension, and Pittman's 6'4", so that gives you an idea of how high. With him jumping and being at full extension, it's possible this ball is somewhere close to, if not 9 feet in the air. Very high, and Pittman is able to come down with it. But he's got a great arm, and he was able to laser this ball in here. But this is a ball that I think gets intercepted the vast majority of the time. It just so happened that the amount of air he put under it was just enough to get over Joey Porter's fingertips. The other reason why this is ill-advised is because when you sail a ball in this situation, you've got a defender right behind. So if that ball is even 6 inches higher and it just grazes off of Pittman's fingertips, that's an interception on the back end. So it ended up being just a perfectly thrown ball, but this seems to me to be more of just a fortunate situation where when you've got this defender trailing and you've got over the top here, this is not a good throw to make. But he made it. He threw a missile in there, and it ended up working out for him. But you would think with a good corner like Joey Porter Jr., if he tries to hit Pittman's in the numbers on this throw, this is an interception. And if he throws this just a smidge higher than he did, it's an interception by Minka on the back. But just so happened the ball went right where it had to go in that situation, and it ended up being a big gain for the Colts to set them off on this drive. We can see it from this view. You can see with Beanie Bishop kind of running back and forth, you could understand if one would think that this was man coverage. As was kind of a theme of the day, the pocket held up pretty well for Richardson on this play. There wasn't a ton that he had to contend with. And you can see here how close, Porter is right there in position. The ball was just over his, and look how, the outstretched fingertips, Pittman's able to catch this ball. If this bounces off as a tip drill, Minka's right there to make an interception. But, sometimes they say fortune favors the brave. This was a very brave throw, and it ended up working out for Richardson in this situation. Wouldn't advise continuing to do things like that, though, but that's the kind of thing that leads you to be leading the league in interceptions. Next play, we're now looking at the Colts' second drive. So the Colts' first drive ended up in a touchdown. They took the lead 7-0, and the Steelers' offense wasn't able to do much and ended up punting. So now the Colts have the ball. This is the first play of their next drive, up 7-0. They come out here in a 2 tight end set this time. So this is 12 personnel. They've got 1 running back, and then they've got their 2 tight ends. And they end up running kind of an interesting play, which has everybody moving in a similar direction. So they end up with 2 deeper routes that end up being kind of like, this is like an out corner. This is a dig. And then the tight ends end up releasing late. They chip and release, and they both kind of run shallower routes. But everything is moving toward Anthony Richardson's right, as you see here. All the receivers are kind of opening up toward Richardson's right. The Steelers in coverage are running a cover 3 again. So got the middle of field close safety. Dante Jackson's dropping, Joey Porter Jr. is dropping, and they aren't really doing a lot to cover the flats. If you notice, they're just kind of falling back and covering intermediate zones. So Pittman, if you watch him here, kind of he's going to run that out, and he does a good job. This is good spatial awareness of settling in a hole in the zone. I mean, it's still a fairly tight window, but he finds a little opening and settles. And you can see Richardson is waiting for him to settle there. So they're clearly on the same page. He's about to release the ball here, and Pittman is making his turn. So Richardson's pretty comfortable that he's going to sit down there and zone. This is actually quite a good read. I was, in my previous pass we talked about, I was talking about how it was not such a good read and an ill-advised throw. This is actually a very good read where a quarterback and receiver are on the same page here, making the throw right here as he's like coming. So that means he's pretty confident that he's not taking this all the way out. Pittman sees the hole and sits, and Richardson sees the hole and anticipates the sit, and they are both on the same page. He throws that right at him, and it ends up being another solid gain to start the next drive for Indianapolis. Here from the end zone view, we can see his processing. He kind of fakes his own read. He's looking that way the whole way. He knows where he's going to go with this one. Doesn't really spend time. So that's one way that, maybe this hole in the future could be smaller for him, is that if he takes the time to look off a defender. Because oftentimes you move zones with your eyes. So, Richardson has a live arm, so he can fit this ball in here, but it's not like a huge window. Defenders in the NFL close quickly. You can see the hole gets, so if you just miss the throw by a little bit, there are a lot of people around there that could intercept this. So one of the ways to move defenders this is why they talk about quarterbacks looking off. Like if you look off to this route, you might hold some of these defenders a little bit more here and create a little more room for yourself. We saw from the replay that from the end zone cam, Richardson kind of stared down that side, which ultimately makes your window a little tighter because defenders are anticipating a throw over there. But when you've got his arm, I guess you don't worry about it too much. He fires that in there. Ultimately a good play from him, and he and Pittman were clearly on the same page for another big gainer for the Colts. So here we are, still in the first quarter, and the Colts are up 14-0, having scored touchdowns on their first two drives. This is the Steelers' second possession, and they have the ball just outside their own 39-yard line, and they have a 4th and 1. I think, first of all, it's informative that Mike Tomlin is going for it here on a 4th and 1. I think it's fair to say that he's been a pretty conservative coach when it comes to going for it on 4th down. The immediate thing that comes to mind was it the 2020 season, I think, when the Steelers lost in the playoffs to the Browns. They had gone down big early and then ended up clawing back and getting it, I believe, to one possession, and then had a 4th and short somewhere around midfield, and he ended up punting it because he felt like the defense was looking good in a situation where most people felt like he should have gone for it. I definitely felt like he should have gone for it at that time. Anyway, the fact that Tomlin's going for it here really tells you something, because he is fairly conservative with these things, and he's also not a very reactionary guy. Like, I don't think he's going for it because the Colts scored touchdowns on their first two drives. To me, I think he's going for it here because of how he felt that the Colts did it. He clearly feels like his defense is getting work today, and I don't think he goes for this if he thinks he's got some way of stemming the tide. So he seems to see something that makes him really worried that the Colts are going to put up a lot of points in this game. So he's not willing to give up on their second possession, even though they're in their own territory. With the 4th and 1, he wants to go for it. So I think that's pretty telling, and that should have been a sign to fans of the Steelers early in this game that, Tomlin is not believing in the defense today for whatever reason, because this kind of play, although, some people will do it, and if it was a coach like Dan Campbell doing this, he wouldn't even blink twice, but for Tomlin to be doing this, I think it's pretty informative about how he felt his defense would fare through this game. So let's see what the Steelers end up doing on this 4th down. So they've got a pretty heavy package in here. So this technically would be considered 22 personnel. There are 2 running backs. This is, apologies to Steelers fan, I've already forgotten what 83's name is, but he's like a tight end fullback hybrid. And then there's Najee Harris. And then they end up having a tight end, and then they have a tackle eligible. So it's actually, I believe, Ryan McCollum, who is a center, but he's playing as like an extra offensive lineman, technically as an eligible receiver. So it's like having a tight end. So it's 22 personnel, 4 eligible receivers right there, and then 1 wide receiver out on the side. And so they end up running a quarterback keeper on this play. And I think it's interesting to note kind of how they ended up trying to block this up. So what the plan is he's going to block him. He's going to block him. He's going to pull and end up setting a trap block. We'll get to that later. He's blocking him. We're going to get a double team right here. And off the double team, Mason McCormick is going to come to the second level and block this linebacker. And then on the edge here, this is Ryan McCollum. He's going to leave the end. So that's our trap block. So the end is going to come free in, and the pulling guard is going to block him there. And Ryan McCollum's job is to come up here and get this linebacker right here. So let's kind of see this in motion. All right, so like we said, here's the pull. And who he's pulling for is this guy right here, because McCollum is going straight through and coming for the linebacker. So here we start to see that in action. Here's that double team we mentioned. And McCormick's coming off the double team to get to the linebacker. Here's the pull. Everything seems to be blocked up okay to this point. Fields is going to get the snap, and he's going to try to follow here, and he needs 1 yard for the first down. So the trap block ends up working. You know, initially you're kind of like, whoa, this guy comes in free, but here's the trap block right there. That ends up working fine. But the one block that doesn't, so Dan Moore does struggle a little bit with his assignment right here, but it turns out, you know, it feels like that would have been enough of a block. But the issue comes with Ryan McCollum, who ends up really struggling to take care of the linebacker here. And honestly, it's because he ended up coming out way too wide. I'm not really sure what he was thinking here, because maybe it was that hard for him to slip past the end here, but he's got to get over and make that block. He's almost blocking as if he expects Fields to be like running a sweep, like around. Look at how much his body gets turned trying to block him to the inside, and look where Fields is coming. Like, it's almost like he thought Fields was like running like off tackle or something. But he ends up like blocking him right into Fields because he took a terrible angle on this block. And that's what dooms this play. It was actually, you know, this play was blocked up. Everything was fine. If Ryan McCollum takes a better angle and gets him head up, he's going to create enough of a lane for Fields to get 1 yard. At least an opportunity for Fields to try to push through and get it. But instead, he ends up like shoving his linebacker right into Fields' path. And that's where Dan Moore's kind of struggle with his block ends up being a contribution. If McCollum makes his block, then Moore's block would end up being good enough, I think, to make this happen. But McCollum's failure to block his man ends up dooming this play. So let's look at it from this side and remember what we said about assignments. So Scotty Miller's coming here. He's pulling. He's blocking him. We've got double team right there, and off of the double team, McCormick's coming up here, and McCollum is letting this guy through. He's going to come through for the trap block right there. He's got to block him, and this is the block we want to pay attention to. McCollum trying to block this man. And this is where I don't know why he continues moving to the outside here. Like, once he allows this end through, he's got to get up and block him. But McCollum ends up, look at how wide he's getting. He really does kind of look like he thinks Fields is going to like come here. And, and I don't know, like, if that was what was supposed to happen or not, but that it's not like what Fields thinks is happening. Look at Fields trying to cut up field and get positive yardage. And you can see how, Dan Moore is struggling a little bit here with his block. But if McCollum had come off here and actually come over to his blocker instead of wheeling around like this, Fields has a chance here. He's a chance to squeeze through and get a first down. But as it so happens, McCollum just ends up blocking him right into Fields' path. I mean, the only thought I have is it possible that the actual intention of this play was for him to come out this way? I don't know. I mean, he's not getting his block anyway, but I mean, that doesn't seem like what I would think one would do on 4th and short. I think you're trying to get up the field as quickly as possible. I don't know. I don't know why you would come this wide and try to take this angle on the block instead of coming up and just making that block. And that ends up sinking this play, and the Steelers end up turning it over on downs. We've jumped ahead in the game a little bit. So after the turnover on downs, we showed you the Colts kicked a field goal to go up 17-0. The Steelers then punted once, then got the ball back, and then had a 91-yard drive that culminated in a George Pickens fumble. Pickens was fighting for yardage and was holding the ball in his palm rather than tucking it, which is one of my biggest pet peeves. I just don't understand why one wouldn't tuck the ball on a football field when you have it. It's so hard to hold on to the ball anyway. People are punching at the ball. Like, why you would leave it more exposed than you have to, I don't understand. And no one even hit the ball. He was just fighting for yardage, and he got tackled and lost the grip on the ball. I mean, such a self-inflicted error, and the Steelers lost a chance at points there. Anyway, they've got the ball back now. They're in a 2-minute drill, and they've already been sacked on first down. So we're looking at a 2nd and 14 with just over a minute to go in the half, and the Steelers have the ball at their own 21-yard line. So what they end up running here, they run, well, first of all, they look to be in 11 personnel with one running back and Freiermuth the tight end. And what they do is they've got two deep curls past the sticks. These two receivers come back like this. And then they've got a post route in the middle. And then Freiermuth runs a shorter curl in the middle of the field. The Colts end up running just a kind of basic cover 2 zone, too high, and their corners don't cover the flats. They end up kind of dropping in cloud coverage. So they're giving up the flats. It's 2-minute drill. They're just trying to kind of cover the intermediate to deep routes. So let's see this in action. Here come the route combinations, and everything is fairly well covered. Fields doesn't really have a chance to wait for his comeback, his curls, before he starts getting pressure on the edge. Dan Moore ends up giving up pressure on the edge, and Fields has to step up, and then this just becomes a scramble drill. So people start breaking off their routes and trying to find an open area, and Fields rolling to his left. Again, this is just the arm talent that he has. He fires across his body, rolling to his left, and hits Pat Freiermuth. And that ends up being a first down and gets things going for their 2-minute drill. It ends up being a really big play. There are two things I want to mention about this play, besides obviously Fields' incredible talent. One is that this shows you an example of where defenders are going and how they're positioned, influencing how open your receiver is. Because Freiermuth looks pretty well covered here. But the key being that Fields can see the back of the defender's helmet. The defender can't see Fields. He can't tell when the ball is being thrown. So a defender that's covering a receiver that isn't looking back at the ball or at the quarterback, that receiver is more open than one would think because the defender's in no position to react to this throw. So even though he's close and this is a tight window, he's not really covered as tightly as you would think because the defender has no idea when the ball is coming and doesn't make any play on the ball whatsoever. The other question one could have, and I don't think this is true, but it could be. Fields is rolling to his left here, and Van Jefferson is coming across this way. Is it possible that he meant to throw this ball to Van Jefferson, and that's what he was trying to do? But since he's rolling to his left, the ball ended up drifting to his left a little bit and going to Pat Freiermuth. Just ended up being an inaccurate throw. Is it possible? If I were to bet, I would say that I would guess no, because he's an NFL quarterback and he's relatively accurate. But you see he's rolling to his left, and that ball's going to trail to his left. Is it possible that he was intending to throw to Van Jefferson? I don't think so. Because like I said before, this is NFL open, right? He's not he's looking over at Freiermuth. So it's not like he'd look at that and be like, this throw is impossible. But I don't know. I feel like there's a 20% chance that maybe he was trying to throw this to Van Jefferson. If I had to bet on it, I would say he was trying to throw it to Freiermuth. I'm sure he'd tell anyone that he wanted to throw it to Freiermuth. But regardless, this is a great play by Fields. The pocket's collapsing. The amount of athletic ability it requires to run out to your left and throw that pass, that's incredible. Honestly, the more I look at it, the more I feel like this was intended for Freiermuth, but I feel like it's at least a fun thing to think about. I think he was trying to throw that pass to Pat Freiermuth, and man, it was a good throw, and not that many people can make that throw, but it jump-started a drive that ultimately ended in a field goal so the Steelers could go to half down 17-3. We're now well into the third quarter, so it remains a 17-3 game. The Steelers are just coming off of Justin Fields had a pretty terrible fumble where he was trying to do too much to get out of a sack, ended up fumbling it in Steelers territory. Fortunately for the Steelers, the Colts missed the field goal on the ensuing drive. And so, for all I just talked about on a couple videos ago when the Steelers were going for it on fourth down, all I just talked about Tomlin was really worried about the defense. The defense actually has been holding up a little bit now. The Colts still only have 17 points. It's 17-3. Steelers have the ball here, and this is a 2nd down and 9, if I remember correctly, at the Steelers just inside their 45-yard line. And they're trying to make something happen now as we are starting to get toward the end of the third quarter, and they still only have 3 points on offense. So what the Steelers end up doing here, on this side of the field with Pickens and Austin, they run kind of a combination of a post, and Austin runs a dig. And on this side of the field, they have a deep kind of inside release that ultimately goes toward the sideline. And Ajay Harris goes out to the flat. The Colts are playing a cover 2. So, they're just dropping 2 high safeties. And again, they've got cloud coverage underneath. So they're giving up the flat. The corners are kind of covering the intermediate area. And they're not really running the Tampa 2 where you have the middle linebacker come all the way back. Middle linebacker is kind of staying in the middle of the field here. So like we said, you have your Austin's going to run in. Pickens is going to run the post. And the other route that's challenging deep is here. I forgot to mention that Darnell Washington is going to be sitting on a curl route. So as you can see, this is 11 personnel. I didn't mention that earlier, but we've got the 1 running back and the 1 tight end. So Fields dropping back and surveying this, and he feels Mason McCormick getting pushed into his lap. So he doesn't like what he has here, although if he's able to hang in for just one more second, Pickens is going to hit that gap. So if you remember cover 2, you got the gap in between the safeties. When they've got cloud coverage up here, you don't really have this hole shot, but you do have the flat. So in this situation, what you're looking at is the flat. On this side, with him coming up, you might be able to high-low this corner. So if the corner goes down toward Najee Harris, then you might have this. But this is always a good thing to look for. So if Fields were able to stand in and really kind of throw this ball now, you've got Pickens right there, and you're like kind of right in the middle of the two safeties. But he feels McCormick come back. I'm not sure. Maybe he doesn't feel like he can step into that kind of throw, and he bails from the pocket. And this is a real benefit here of quarterback movement. Quarterback movement, especially when people are in zones, causes zone defenders to move with the quarterback and creates openings. It's one thing that has helped Patrick Mahomes so much, especially when you're able to make throws on the run like Fields is. So the big thing that happens as Fields moves, if you notice, like the two safeties are kind of sitting in the middle of their zones. As Fields comes over here, this safety notices, I believe that's Van Jefferson running down the sideline, and starts going over there because as Fields is running in that direction, and that creates a nicer void for Pickens, who's continued to split the safeties. This safety coming here creates an even wider area for Fields to make this throw. And he, again, rears up and makes that throw and gets a big gain. Just what the Steelers offense needed at this stage of the game. Again, one could argue that this throw could have happened right here. You know, this would have been a nice, they talk about throwing with anticipation. This would have been a great throw if he had made the decision to just pop this throw over here and let Pickens run to it right there. That would have been a great throw, but you know what? He makes a great throw if he's right, like let's say his thought process was my guard's being walked into my lap, like I can't afford to not be able to step into this throw and miss it, sail the throw and throw a pick or something. So if that's his thought process, well, this really worked out for him because he came out, he ended up moving this safety who is looking over here, created an opening for Pickens. They were on the same page. Huge gain. You can see this again from the end zone view and really kind of look at the thing to determine is like how muddy did this pocket get with McCormick getting walked back. So as you can see, Fields kind of looks left first, then he's come back. So he probably can see Pickens now, and it really looks like he thought about this. See, he's kind of patting the ball, moving his shoulders, but I wonder if he just wasn't comfortable based on how much this pocket is collapsing, and he didn't feel like he could step into that throw and make an accurate throw. But he got out, and he made a great throw. I mean, this is a really good play, and this is, again, a big benefit of having someone like Fields at quarterback. You can get big plays in situations where a quarterback that doesn't have his mobility and just his arm talent can't make that throw. So that ended up being a huge gain and was really kind of the first step in a much better offensive performance for the rest of this game for the Steelers. Now we're later in this drive, and the Steelers have brought the ball down into a goal-to-go situation. They have a 3rd and goal at the Colts 5-yard line. Still down 17-3, and at this point we are under 3 minutes to go in the third quarter. Steelers end up in 12 personnel. They've got the one running back, Najee Harris, and they've got 2 tight ends, Darnell Washington and Pat Freiermuth. What they end up running here, Freiermuth kind of runs a post. Darnell Washington runs like a return route. He goes out and then comes back in. And Jefferson kind of comes in and runs a pick route for Pickens running a slant. And it looks like Jefferson kind of learned his lesson from the Broncos game because he doesn't contact Pickens' defender. He kind of just gets in the way and moves up. If you look at this action right here, it's actually very well done. Pickens is open. Like here, you can throw the slant. But Fields isn't looking over at Pickens. He's kind of looking up to start here. And he ends up seeing an opening for him to escape and running it in for a touchdown himself. Fields' mobility in the red zone is a huge weapon. And I'm going to show you why I think that Fields was going to run this ball the whole time. By the way, just to get an idea of what the Colts are doing, the Colts are just playing straight up man-to-man, and their 2 extra defenders are just kind of having play underneath zones here. And what I think Fields was doing, if we watch what he does, if you remember, like, what are his receivers doing as they come out, right? Like, you've got action all the way over here on his right. You have action all the way over here on his left. Freiermuth is the only guy that's, like, somewhat in the middle of the field. But even then, as he hits the back of his drop, Freiermuth is still outside the hash. Like, by the time Freiermuth makes his move, Fields already has made the decision to run. Why am I telling you all this? Well, let's look at what Fields is doing here. Fields drops back, and he's looking straight down the middle of the field. Well, as we pointed out, this is the closest guy to the middle of the field, Pat Freiermuth. He's not looking at a receiver. He's looking straight ahead. So, to me, he's doing 2 things. He's identifying the coverage, and he's holding these people in place. I think his intention this entire play is to run. He's staring down, and then he sees his opening, and he bolts. I don't think he looked at a single receiver this entire progression. He went back. Look at him. He's looking straight ahead, looking right at the linebackers. I think making sure he knows what he sees. Everybody's covered man-to-man, so these 2 are the only people with eyes on him. They are both, over to his left, shifting even further to his left. Although he doesn't seem to look that far to his left. His ankle seems to still be right here. But like I said, I don't think he's looking at a receiver this whole time. I think he's identifying the coverage, seeing if he has a place to run, and then going. This, to me, he had decided he was running the whole way. And it's a huge weapon. He's so quick, he's athletic, and he will be able to use that threat in order to create passing lanes like he did on that previous throw to Pickens. Like, this will be useful in the red zone too. The threat of his run will create so many opportunities for the Steelers' red zone offense. But, based on what I saw in this play, I think that though he had people out in patterns, I think Fields was going to run this ball the whole time if he had the opportunity. He did, and he took advantage. Touchdown Steelers, and they cut this lead now down to 1 possession. They cut it down to 17-10. All right, so now we're at the next Colts drive. The Colts are up 17-10, and this is a pretty crucial drive in the game. The Steelers' defense has kind of calmed down after allowing 3 scores on their first 3 drives, and they've held the Colts without points for quite a while now. The Steelers' offense appears to have kicked things into gear. They had a nice touchdown drive. They're now only down 1 possession. If the defense can get off the field on this drive and quickly, the Steelers might be able to turn this game on its head. We're now in a situation where the Colts have a 2nd and 10 on their own 42-yard line, and they come out in 11 personnel with 1 running back and 1 tight end. What they end up doing, they end up having the receiver out here run a drag route, the receiver over here run like a curl in the middle, and then they run an outside release go route down the side. The Steelers end up, interestingly, rotating their safeties right here. So you're going to see Elliott and Minka switch places. And then they run a fairly standard cover 2 with the corners giving up the flats and doing a more cloud coverage picture. Although I will say this running back did hold the corner over here in the flat a little bit, so they're not completely giving it up, but they are kind of dropping back if the flat is not too dangerous. Flacco ends up throwing the go route down at the bottom, and it's there. He's got a step on Porter. It's not the easiest throw in the world, but Flacco just misses him. Overthrows it by just a little bit. I mean, that throw was there. And then you will probably remember that Minkah Fitzpatrick then, after the ball bounces another step or two, he ends up hitting the receiver, and you see the flag flying. He gets called for unnecessary roughness for hitting a defenseless player. I know this flag was the subject of a lot of consternation for Steelers fans. I mean, this would have been a 3rd and 10 at the 42-yard line with the Steelers getting a chance to get off the field, and instead they got a 15-yard penalty and a first down. And spoiler alert, this drive ended up resulting in a touchdown. So Steelers fans were understandably upset about this, but I think, opinions on this play differ mainly in 2 different ways. I think there's a question of what you think football is and should be, and there's a question of what the rules say right now. I think a lot of people that are upset about this play kind of fall under the camp of football is supposed to be a violent sport. They're supposed to hit each other. What else is a defender supposed to do in this situation is part of the excuse. I don't know that this, to me, really falls in the what else is a defender supposed to do situation, because, this doesn't seem like one of those, incredibly bang-bang plays where it would have been tough. And to be fair, let's run it in real time, but this does appear that this hit was avoidable. It's not like Minkah came at the same time the ball came. The ball came over, and Minkah's running hard, but I don't know that, this feels like there was intent to hit him. That's, my opinion here is that it does feel like he tried to hit him. I think he could have avoided this hit. This didn't feel like an unavoidable situation to me. Reasonable people can disagree. But if your argument is that I feel like players should be allowed to do that in football, kind of the Tom Brady argument where he says that it's on a quarterback to protect his receivers, not put them in these kinds of situations, that's one thing, and that's a difficult debate to settle. I think different people have different opinions on what football should be. It's definitely an argument I'm willing to hear. But if your question is whether this is a penalty by the letter of the law, the way that NFL rules are currently written, unfortunately, this is fairly clearly a penalty. The rules on defenseless receivers or defenseless players, including defenseless receivers, are not very forgiving for defensive players. The language says that if there is any forcible contact to the head or neck area that's initiated by a player's, I believe it's head, forearm, or shoulder. I might be missing another body part there. And even if the contact started below the neck area. So here, Minkah hits him and there's clear contact with his head, and that contact comes from his shoulder. By the letter of the law, they're going to call that every time. They don't care what's fair or what's putting too much of a burden on a defender. The NFL referees have shown a pattern that they are calling this unnecessary roughness every single time. So if your gripe is that the ref made the wrong call, I don't know what to tell you. By the letter of the law, that's fairly clearly a penalty. If your gripe is that the rule is unfair, that's a separate discussion. And I think that's a fair discussion to have if you'd like. I think reasonable people can disagree about whether these rules are too punitive on defenders. But these are the rules right now, and by the rule, it's a penalty. And it's unfortunate, and like I said, reasonable people can disagree, but this does not seem to me like one of those where it was like completely unavoidable. I don't know. Maybe, I can't pretend that I've ever been able to run as fast as him and that I've been put in these positions. But I think coming with that is also the idea that he's way more athletic than I can and can probably avoid things that I couldn't. I mean, I don't know. I watched this over and over again, and at this speed, like maybe it was harder to avoid than I'm giving him credit for. But the NFL rule doesn't care about how easy it was to avoid or not. They just simply say you can't make contact, forcible contact to their head or neck area. And he does it here with his shoulder. It's unfortunate. Like though anyone rooting for the Steelers would feel that this was a really unfortunate situation, but the NFL has made it clear that they're not going to let you hit people in the head, even if it's an accident, even if it's bang bang. And I think that, it's everybody knows that. All defenders know that. You're in a crucial situation. The ball's falling incomplete. Like, I know you want to set the tone, and I know these are complicated situations, and the rule is not written with any degree of complexity. Unfortunately, the rule is very clear, and by the rule, this is unnecessary roughness. If, people can disagree with the spirit of the rule or the fairness of the rule, and I think that's all fair. But unfortunately, this is what we're playing under, and this is what they're going to be calling in the NFL, at least right now. All right, we're later on the same drive. So now the Colts have a 3rd and 7 on the Steelers' 40-yard line. So even after that unnecessary roughness penalty, Steelers still have a chance to get off the field here. If you stop them at the 40, they're looking at like a 56, 57-yard field goal, something like that. So not an automatic, and their kicker's already missed a field goal today. So the Steelers really trying to get off the field, give their offense a chance. They're only down 7 here, and we're nearing the fourth quarter. What the Colts come out and do here, so they come in 11 personnel. There's your running back, there's your tight end. So 1 running back, 1 tight end, 11 personnel. And the Steelers, as they have done much of this game, are running a cover 3. Got 3 deep responsibility here. And so the Colts run a levels concept. So they're trying to attack 3 levels of the zone here. It's really what I should call it. I mean, it is a levels concept, but it's really a flood of the zone. They're sending 3 people into the same side of the zone, the same part of it, and they're hitting it at a different level. So he's going deep. He's getting like an intermediate, and then the tight end's coming out into the flat. So they're hitting it at all 3 levels. On the backside, they've got a dig coming in here. So just ends up being like you try to put defenders in conflict and look for openings in the zone. If you really like flood one part of the zone with 3 defenders or with 3 receivers, it creates more people for the zone on that side to have to cover. The Steelers, they're running their cover 3, but what they end up trying to do to try to confuse the protections is they drop Nick Herbig back in zone and blitz Patrick Queen. The idea being that then you end up overloading this side of the line because pre-snap they will have accounted for Herbig, right? So you're going to have blockers kind of blocking air out here because they're assuming that he's going to rush and then he drops off. And if Queen inserts late, then he might not be accounted for. So you might end up overloading this part of the line and increase the chance that you get somebody free, even though you're still only rushing 4 players. So you can see based on how they're aligned kind of what could potentially be happening. Like the tackle accounting for Watt, the guard accounting for, I believe that's Hayward there. And if the center accounts for, I can't tell if that's Benton or Ogunjobi, then there could be a gap for Queen to come through. And that almost comes to fruition here. Queen inserts late, and that's Benton. Benton ends up kind of more going toward the guard, But Queen actually gets past the center here because the center wasn't completely ready for him. If you notice, like the tackle and initially the tight end are just blocking air because they've accounted for Herbig, who ends up dropping off. Queen gets past the center but gets picked up by the running back. And unfortunately, that blitz pickup is pretty solid, and Flacco, noticing that he's got a guy dropping off on this side, so there's no pass rush from his front side, he just calmly rolls out to that side. And here's the problem when you end up doing kind of a zone blitz like that and replacing. Ideally, you get to the quarterback quickly because now you're putting somebody out in coverage who's not as accustomed to covering. And now putting Nick Herbig in coverage isn't the same thing. It's like the Chiefs putting George Karlaftis in coverage. Like Nick Herbig is an outside linebacker. Theoretically, he can cover a little bit, but you know what? He can't cover Josh Downs. And so the fact that the Steelers aren't able to get this pressure from the replacing Herbig with Queen, now unfortunately Herbig is in the zone having to cover Josh Downs, and this is just too easy of a play. He's not able to get the depth and especially the width quick enough to hinder this throw whatsoever, especially because Flacco has rolled to that side and given him a better angle to throw. So Herbig has no chance of stopping this play, and they end up getting a 25-yard gain on 3rd and 7. And that kind of eliminates the chance that the Steelers had of ending this drive with no points. We can see it again from the end zone view. So what you're trying to do here is accounting for Watt, accounting for Hayward, and then he's accounting for Benton, and he's accounting for Herbig, and I think he's got help from the tight end. So the hope is that, oftentimes you'll get a double team here, and if Queen inserts late, there might not, since he's with Hayward, if he helps out to his right, which is kind of what happens, then Queen might come in free, and you're not even rushing extra defenders. So here it is. He gets the gap, the center gets a hand on him, and is able to push him in, and look at how well the running back fills in pass protection. I mean, that's what you want. He fills, there's nothing, suddenly the pressure, is not going to get home, right? And since they've overloaded that side, everything's over here. They get walled off. Flacco calmly comes out here. You see Herbig trying to get enough depth as Downs is running his route here. And, I mean, that he's just not going to be able to get out quickly enough to cover a guy like Downs. Look at that gap. I mean, that's what happens. As people say, I think Seth Kaiser of the Kansas City Sports Network, I've seen him saying, is the zone blitz giveth and the zone blitz taketh away. And if your blitz doesn't get home, you have guys in coverage that aren't as used to being in coverage, and he can't run with Josh Downs. So there ends up being a big gain here, 25-yard gain, and unfortunately the Colts would score a touchdown on this drive to get the lead back up to 2 possessions to 24-10. Well, I shouldn't have said that the Colts would score a touchdown on that drive. I forgot that this is one of the plays that we're going to review, the actual touchdown play. So at this point, the Steelers defense kind of held up on 2 straight plays, and the Colts are now in a 3rd and 10 at the 15-yard line. So hopefully they're trying to hold the Colts to a field goal and make this 20-10. It's still a 17-10 game. And the last play we saw, the pass to Downs, ended up being the last play of the 3rd quarter. So we're in the 4th quarter now, and the Colts have this 3rd down. The Steelers are trying to get them off the field. And this ends up being a pretty odd-looking play. So let's kind of break it down. We've got 1 running back, 1 tight end. It's 11 personnel. And the Steelers in coverage, I honestly, they confuse me. So what the Colts end up doing is they run these kind of like double across. So this kind of looks like what they call a drive concept when you have like a higher and lower crossing route. And the outside guy kind of just runs back into the end zone on a go route. Actually gets an inside release and then runs a go. And then they have Alec Ogletree, the tight end, help chip TJ Watt, and then leak out late and run a crossing route across the formation. And the thing that is weird about this play from the Steelers' perspective is they've got two guys here. One is Joey Porter Jr., and I can't read the number on the other guy. I think that's Beanie Bishop. Beanie Bishop and Joey Porter Jr. are playing man, and everybody else on the field is playing zone. You've got two high safeties. Jackson sitting in an intermediate route. And then Patrick Queen is kind of in the middle of the field. I don't know who's wrong or what's wrong here, but I can tell you what. I can guarantee you this is not supposed to happen. To have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 defenders in this like third of the field. These two defenders are the only people on this side of the field, and nobody in the middle with Alec Ogletree. So I guess there are two possibilities here. One is that both of these two guys are wrong, and they shouldn't have been playing man. Because clearly everybody else is playing zone. You got single high. He's coming out intermediate, and he's here. So is he expecting like him to fill here and him to fill here? Maybe. That's one possibility, is that these two are wrong. I mean, in general, like running a combination of man and zone is unwise because this is the kind of thing that can happen. If you have people that are in a zone and the people that are being guarded man-to-man end up running into that zone also, you just have a clutter of defenders in one area. The other possibility is maybe Porter and Bishop are right, and Patrick Queen is supposed to take Ogletree and man. In which case, then you kind of have like 4 zone defenders that are still like spread out, and if Queen were running with him, maybe that's a possibility? I don't know. Or there's some understanding that like, look, we're going to cover these guys, but if anybody comes across the middle, like you got to pick him up, right? I don't know. I mean, it's either that Queen is supposed to run with him, or that these two guys messed up and Queen is expecting, because if you notice, like Queen is drifting over, I think noticing these guys coming this way, he's drifting over in anticipation for them coming, and nobody is paying any heed to Alec Ogletree. So, all right, Alex Ogletree. I should probably know his name. But Ogletree in any case. It's a tough rep. That's a clear miscommunication. In general, it just seems very unlikely to me that a team would play a combination of man and zone like this unless they were extremely ambitious. But I mean, if that's why, like, my first instinct is that these two are wrong and they should have played zone. But I don't know, maybe this is a very creative coverage and that's what they're trying to do, in which case, like, he was supposed to run. Either way, like I said, I guarantee you that this picture was not the plan. To have all these guys over here, have these two over here, and yeah, I don't know, and have him wide open in the middle. In any case, it's a busted coverage. It's an easy touchdown for the Colts on third down, and it ends up taking what could have been a 20-10 game to a 24-10 game. So, you know, that's a 4-point swing right there in a game that the Steelers lost by 3. So very unfortunate that this happened. Unclear exactly who was in the wrong here, but something's clearly wrong here. All right, well, the Steelers now down 24-10, have the ball at their own 42-yard line. And we're now just under 14 minutes to go in the game. 2 possessions down. Really need to come down and score here. So here's the play that they run. So they've got here 2 running backs. So this is 21 personnel. 2 running backs and 1 tight end. They've got 2 wide receivers. And they hit the Colts at the perfect time. The Colts are playing quarters coverage. So they've got 4 deep, each responsible for a quarter of the field. And the Steelers send deep crosses that end up occupying all 3 of these defenders and bringing them down. And they send the fullback out, who helps occupy here and kind of keep depth over here. And they end up running a screen. And one of the things I really like about this screen is how subtly, clearly the offensive line are coached up very, very well on how to kind of disguise the screen. So the guys who are coming out, one is Mason McCormick, the left guard, and one is the right guard right here. And so what they do is they both participate in double teams. So they double team, and then they kind of subtly let their counterpart, their teammate, handle the block from the double team. And look at how nonchalantly these 2 kind of slide out for the screen. It's not obvious at all. They kind of slowly slide out there, get into position. And look, it's not like you have a bunch of defenders. I think this is the only defender that starts to be like, hey. And, a lot of times people will key in on the screen, but this was so subtly done that if you look got defender out here, like we said, these 3 are occupied with a deep route. He's watching him come by. He's the one guy that kind of peeled off, and he's noticing the screen too. But there's nobody that's none of the D linemen were alerted to it. A lot of times that happens. A defensive lineman will kind of peel off. The one defensive lineman that had some inkling is the one that they were double teaming, but Zach Frazier did a good job of walling him off. Look at the other defensive linemen. They're completely sold on just rushing the passer. And, the other thing that's subtle, it's completely believable that Dan Moore and Broderick Jones could be beaten to the outside. So nothing seems amiss, But they did a really good job here of setting the screen up, and they get it to Najee Harris with blocker in place. This guy has been walled off, and he's also in place. And Harris does such a great job of cutting this back. And here's the one free guy who has an initial chance at him. And look at how his cut inside just completely eliminates that defender. Does a great job cutting inside, and look at the vision he had to take this all the way down to 25-yard line. Najee Harris caught this ball around the 38 or so. And so he takes it another, that's 25 and 10, 35, 32 yards from where he caught it. No, 37 yards from where he caught it. All the way down to the 25-yard line or so. And let's watch it in real time, because as we were saying on the Steeler Thoughts Chief Feelings podcast for this week that we released a couple days ago, Harris, when he's in the open field, he still looks like he's got some juice. He's athletic. Look at him cut this back. And, he definitely got a lot more than I would have anticipated from the screen. It was a combination of good vision and good athleticism. But we can see a little more closely how the screen gets set up. So the fullback's going to come out. Jones and Moore are kind of allow their people around, because you want to push linemen back, defensive linemen back in a screen. And so then we've got a double team, and then he kind of tries to subtly come off the double team. And the same thing here. We double and just subtly come off and slide out, trying not to attract a ton of attention. And watch how they do it. Just slowly. Look at how nonchalant this is. This is so well done. He just kind of comes off. He's like, do. It's kind of like, looks like somebody playing like capture the flag, and one of the people that like has the flag and is trying to get back to his own side and like not draw any attention to himself. He just like, do. Slowly gets out there. He's in position, makes his block. Fantastic. And look at the juice. Look at Najee go. He clearly still has a lot of athleticism, and so I hope that they're able to get the run game situated with him running the ball, because he hasn't had a ton of success this year. That actually might be something that I'll take a look at during the Steelers bye week, is to see what happened with Harris so far this year. I kind of look at all of his run plays and see how much of it is blocking, how much of it is his vision. Why is it that the Steelers are struggling so much when he's running the ball? Because he looks good on plays like this. We've gotten to 5:14 to go in the fourth. The Steelers ended up scoring on that drive we showed you that was the end of the drive with the Najee Harris screen pass we just showed you. So the Steelers scored at the end of that drive. At that point, they made it 24-17, and then on their subsequent drive, the Colts kicked a field goal. So the Steelers are now down 27-17, and they've got the ball at their own 38-yard line and have a 3rd and 2 with about just over 5 minutes, 5:14 to go in the fourth quarter. So another gotta have it 3rd down, and they come out in 11 personnel. They've got Harris as the running back and Freiermuth as the tight end, and they've got 3 wide receivers. And the Colts just end up running cover 1 man. So they've got a single high safety, and it looks like he's manned up on him. Or actually, I think he might end up taking him in man coverage, yeah. So you can see man-to-man, 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 man-to-man. He's responsible for Harris. This is the underneath robber defender, and this is the single high safety. So they're running like he's going to come in and sit. He's going to come do an in-cut. Austin's going to come across the formation, and Pickens is running a go. And as we've seen so far this year, when Fields comes back and he sees one single high safety over toward the bunch, Pickens one-on-one running a go, he's going to throw the go to Pickens. And he does so here. It's a beautiful ball, and it's completed for a 37-yard gain on 3rd and 2. Fields again has just time and time again shown that if you load up and you only put one safety back there, give him an opportunity to go long, he will not only make the throw, but he'll make you pay. That connection with Pickens is really good. And so, as I had said a couple weeks ago on I think it was after the Steelers-Broncos game, if teams want to load up on the run against the Steelers, I feel okay about that with Fields and Pickens. If they're going to play man-to-man and only have one safety over the top, get Pickens in one-on-one situations, they're going to complete these passes. They've shown it through 4 weeks now. They're going to do this. So teams are going to have to respect it. You can see from the end zone view how good this throw is. It's got a good pocket, decisive, beautiful, right on the money. If there's one gripe anyone can have, and you can see the defender has it, is George Pickens does with his right hand. You can see there, push off slightly. And this kind of goes into the subjective nature of NFL refereeing. You can see it there in real time. The push off right there. By the rule of the law, is that pass interference? Yeah. This is where sometimes you see that called and sometimes you don't. It's kind of in that gray area where it's kind of unclear. By the letter of the law, it definitely is, but I can't say it's called 100% of the time. One thing I will say, though, is I don't know if the refs saw this, because Pickens didn't use both hands. He just used his backhand with his front hand exposed, and the ref is looking from over here. So I have a feeling the referee may not have seen this push off whatsoever. And whether that should be called or not, I don't know. I'm not a big person for subjective decisions. Like I said, it's one of those that to me, like, people can be mad either way. I've seen it called sometimes. I've seen it not called. I don't think it's fair to be upset when a flag is thrown when you do something that is against the letter of the law. But, you know, no flag was thrown here, and no flag has been thrown in many situations like this. In any case, it was a great throw and a great catch, and slight push off or not, it ended up being a big gain for the Steelers and allowed them to keep getting down the field. At this point, down 27-17. You could see at the end of that clip, we'll show it one more time, you can see the defender asking for the pass interference call, but doesn't get it. But the more I look at this, the more I really feel like I don't think the ref can see it. It comes like from that backhand. I don't know if the official's in position to see that. It would be interesting to know whether he would have called it if he saw it, but who knows. All right, so now we're in real late game situation. The Steelers scored on that drive that we showed you with the play to Pickens. So at that point, they made it 27-24, and then they've gotten the ball back. And they ended up on their 43-yard line with 1:43 left to go. And they had a 1st and 10. And devastatingly, there was a miscommunication with the shotgun snap. It seems like, in hindsight, after hearing what people said Fields said about it, it looks like Fields had kicked his leg, which was the signal to Mason McCormick to tap Zach Frazier to snap the ball. But after Fields kicked his leg, he ended up seeing a change in the coverage and so wasn't quite ready for the snap. He said afterward that he's got to know that when he kicks his leg, the ball's going to be coming. Anyway, they ended up losing a significant amount of yardage, and they ended up in this situation now in 3rd and long. They still have some time, but they really have to convert here. And here's the play that they're running here in 3rd and long. They basically are just sending everybody to the sticks. So you can see they've got the ball on the 30. Looks like it's about 3rd and 21 or 3rd and 22. So they're kind of sending everybody to the sticks. And the Colts are dropping into cover 2, and they bring everybody deep down. And then so they get late releases from Freiermuth and Harris out into the flat. So in this scenario, you know, everything is like, I'm glad Fields didn't try to force a throw in here. These are not zones that you're going to fit a throw in. And I think he realized that, and also saw Dan Moore getting destroyed over here. Honestly, I think we're kind of lucky that, you know, Moore, actually he did kind of end up getting the better, but sometimes in those situations they call a pancake. He did get him, or they call a hold, but I think he did get the defender kind of turned around and went down over the top of him. So looks clean from here, but hard to say. But I think that kind of got Fields off his spot too, and so he ended up trying to escape. But they had a spy on him who was ready for this and ended up cutting off his escape route, so he dumped it off to Harris. So I do think that kind of the two options available here, right, are to try to move defenders with your feet. Unfortunately, this was not the right. I mean, in general, I like this instinct to like come up through a B gap rather, or was that a B or a C gap rather than, I guess that ended up being the C gap, like come out like that rather than just come around the tackle. But in this specific scenario, based on where everything was, it might have been better to try to bail this way. But you either try to move people with your feet or dump it off to one of these two guys and get some yardage. And so he ultimately dumped it off to Najee Harris, who made just an unbelievably inexplicable decision right here. Like, you're running low on time. This is a 3rd and long. You're trying to get some yardage back and set up for a 4th down play. Harris has more than enough opportunity to just take this out of bounds. And instead, he tries to do what? I don't know. I don't know what your plan is here. Like, you're not getting the 1st down, which is up here. You need to get out of bounds. Your team doesn't have any timeouts. Instead, he gets tackled in bounds. Forward progress. It's when you push someone backwards and they go out of bounds, since you get forward progress, they count you as being in bounds because you were at the marker they're going to give you while in bounds. So the clock running is extremely unfortunate, not just because they lose a lot of time, but this is a 4th down play and they don't have a timeout. So now they're not able to set up. They have to call a play on the run. I mean, this is a really, I hate to be talk show host here, but this is a really, really poor decision from Najee Harris. You get out of bounds, the team gets a chance to regroup, catch a breath, you can substitute, you can try to figure out what you're going to try to do for the 4th down play, which is basically the game. Harris was not able to get out of bounds or chose not to go out of bounds for whatever reason, and they weren't able to do that. They had a rush 4th down play and failed and ultimately ended up losing the game. So, I mean, they were in a good position with a minute 40 some odd left at the 43-yard line. They had a 1st down, and then the fumbled snap and then this decision by Harris to not get out of bounds combined ended up completely tanking any chance they had of getting a game-tying field goal. And the Steelers ended up losing this one. Well, that's all we have for the film review for this week. Thanks to all of you that followed along, and thanks to you that follow us on the YouTube channel or on any podcasting app, the Steeler Thoughts Chief Feelings podcast. And to those of you who follow along at STCF715 on TikTok, Twitter, or Instagram. Again, we try to post fairly regularly on social media, and especially on Twitter, the nights of the Chiefs and Steelers games. We will be posting after Sunday Night Football this weekend when the Steelers host the Cowboys. We may not be able to post as much after the Chiefs Monday night game hosting the Saints, just because of time constraints. But we'll definitely be online talking with you all after the Steelers-Cowboys game. Thanks again for following along. And until next time.